Welcome. My name is Bob Bakert. This is Jazz Guitar Today. We're here with Peter Bernstein, who, I mean, really, you don't need much of an introduction. My God, you've been freaking everywhere, done everything with about everybody. It's actually it's mind-boggling. I do get to say that quite a bit because I've been on I've done these interviews with a lot of luminaries, if you will. But you have a special place for me. First of all, Jim Hall was a big influence on you. And this thing, I was doing a little reading and watching and listening. Few guitarists put as much care, sensitivity, and subtle strength into every note, every single note, as Bernstein does. Among the finest melodicists in jazz, he has a full breath command of his instrument. His biggest asset are his knack for crisp understanding and simplicity, from the New York Times. And that could have been said of Jim Hall. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's very nice. I mean, all the things that Jim Hall was about were things that, you know, I mean, through his example became important to me.
Yeah,
Just so I was very lucky well, before just hearing his records and stuff like that, but then
yeah,
getting to be around him and a little bit as a student, and then getting to play with him in some situations, and just to get be that close to someone who's such a, I don't want to say icon because that's kind of a,
yeah. No, I know what you mean.
he's just an individual. His musical persona is wrapped up in his humanity. The
Yeah,
instrument disappears with
not
Jim
a
Hall. It's
guitar.
about the instrument.
Yeah,
So it's about the ideals that he kind of, an aesthetic that he embodied. So I just feel like to see him up close and to be around a lot of incredibly strong musical personalities like that was my true education. Just to see, first of all, how disparate they were, how different they
yeah.
were.
Well,
And
yeah.
what made them so strong was just how they embraced and inhabited their own uniqueness. That's kind of what it's about. I mean, I stole a lot of things from Jim and tried to get things from him that are very concrete. Like he played this voicing, and that's it.
Right.
But beyond just stealing stuff from people, it's also the ideals that they seem to stand for, musical persona. And with Jim, realizing like why he was such a great accompanist was because of his personality. He was an unselfish person. He really played to make the person he was playing with sound their best. That came from a generosity of spirit rather than only having good voice leading. I mean, that helps, of course, and good rhythm, all that stuff. And there's a lot to steal from Jim in terms of his
Yeah.
copying and actual things he does. But to realize that the greater picture of it was about his pure generosity as a musician and just wanting to make the overall sound be as strong as possible. So
Well, that shows in what you're doing as well. I mean, your playing is spectacular, to be honest with you. I mean, it's so pure. Your melody, your sense of melody is so pure. You're not, when I hear you play, and I hear a lot of people play, I don't hear you, and I say this among all my favorite players, actually, and I don't mean to, I don't hear you playing a guitar, I hear you playing music.
well, I was lucky to get into jazz through the guitar, but then really quickly became like really just, completely taken with the whole history of jazz, all the instruments, all the saxophone players, the trumpet players, the piano players, the arrangers, the big bands, the vocalists, thing of it. So it quickly went beyond the guitar, or not beyond, but just the guitar was part of a lot of the music that I loved, but it wasn't a part of a lot of the music that I loved. So it
Absolutely.
was just getting into the music and learning it, trying to absorb it as a language, regardless of the instrument that was playing it. And in fact, I mean, I always recommend to any student to just like transcribe not your instrument. Take something from another instrument so that the sound is not generated you can get, if you can figure out where a guitar player, oh, he played it in this register and he did this kind of picking, you can get very close to how they actually sounded if you are fastidious enough. But if you're trying to get Clifford Brown's articulation, there's a whole nother set of obstacles that 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 really make you deal with your instrument on a level that's not just like, let's see, alternate picking. It's like you're trying to You have another sound in mind that's coming from somebody spitting notes out through a horn. And of course, the musical mind of Clifford Brown is like you gotta check that out. You can't just say he didn't play the guitar, so I can't do that. Well, you have to absorb everything you can about the language. So I had great teachers. Ted Dunbar was one who said, "Don't just be about the guitar. Jazz
Right.
is and music is about so much more than the guitar." So
I
just
had my eyes opened in a big way. In 2013, I signed up to go to school at an audition to go to school at Georgia State University in their jazz guitar department. And then my one of my first assignments was transcribing a Clifford Brown solo. And I thought, and I saw I'm playing this thing. I'm going, this isn't like any guitar thing I've ever done before. And that was, so that's why I'm laughing, because it was like, and and honestly, I know you're a huge fan of Wes as well. Wes is the same thing. Whenever I worked on a Wes tune, it was so unlike anybody else's way of doing anything. I mean, it was like I can follow most guitar players, just I can just hear it and go, okay, that's where it's at. But when I first started listening to Wes, I got kind of like, what the hell is this, And so you can speak a little bit to the whole Wes thing if you like a little bit and what that meant
he
to
was
you.
really the first guy that was playing, what we would call straight ahead jazz. That just blew my mind because I could hear it was Smoking at the Half Note. It was the first record I heard, and some stuff with Jimmy Smith, and they were blues, and I could hear that they were playing the blues form, but there was like, what are all these other flavors and sounds and designs and patterns and colors and all these things that it's like, well, that's not the blues scale, that's not the
Right,
blues. Like, what's going on with this music? So Wes was the first one, and I just immediately, gravitated towards just his what he emitted, emotionally, just like intensity, but such a coolness and such a joy. When I finally got to see him play, this was, there was
wow,
that first video floating around, that I remember going to some friend's house who had it on like a VHS or something like that and
right,
watching him play, like the effortlessness and just the face, like how relaxed he was and how connected he was to the instrument.
right,
Yet at the same time, he was like more connected to just like, here I am playing with these guys and
right, yeah.
great, and we're playing for you. And he was just like up and like forward. I still look at that and I'm like, wow, that's just
Well,
like,
the melodic phrase, the melodic note choices were one crazy thing, but
yeah,
then his rhythmic fluidity was just like,
everything,
what?
everything.
It's very interesting. I mean, you play obviously a lot in New York City. I mean, you stay busy with all the heavy cats. I mean, to use
Well,
the phrase. And I mean, between Smoke and the Vanguard and all that kind of stuff. And I see you with Bill Stewart and Larry Goldings and all these guys. And I mean,
I mean,
that's a very envious place to be. And I think and I want you to talk a little bit about you hit on it. When you are aware of all the instruments and what they can do, and then what you can do, and are aware of what the genre is and the history of it and what it is you're trying. I think that makes for the overall sound. I mean, where everybody really understands each other and understands what you're kind of going for. And there's an appreciation. You want to talk about how like you and Larry and Bill and all you guys play together and what that language is like?
well, in the case of playing with Larry and Bill, it's just been something that we've been able to keep doing over more than 30 years, which is just an amazing thing. It was really fun when we first got together, and we're kind of getting our little repertoire together and like playing kind of steadily. We played every week at a place called Augie's Smoke, and Larry had his little keyboard organ kind of rig with a bass thing, and then a top. Before he
Yeah,
ever really knew how to play a real organ, he was doing lots of gigs on this thing, and
yeah,
just could make music out of anything that has keys. So right away, him and Bill hit it off, and because Larry and I had been playing with a bunch of different drummers, and just playing with different guys. And I knew Bill from when I went to college a couple years before. So when the three of us got together, it just felt really nice, and we just were able to keep going. And early on, we got a chance to make a recording. So we kind of had this sense of like, oh, we just made a recording. I guess we're a group. I guess we're a band. So that was we just kept it together through many years of sometimes not playing that much and sometimes playing a lot more. But it's just I mean it's just a chemistry. Larry's one of my oldest musical friends, and I met Bill shortly after, and then they have such a great chemistry together, and have played. They started playing with Maceo Parker together around the time we started playing, making our first record. So they had other associations, and they played with Schofield together after we think. So we all just kind of straight. And I played with Bill on some of my groups and stuff. So it was just like individually connecting, and as a trio, it just felt like something about the 3 points, where there's no square. It's just everything is at that triangular thing, and just the organ trio format where the guitar has that role to play, kind of in between the organ player's two
Left,
hands.
left and right hand.
To comp in that kind of follow one mind who's
Right.
controlling the bass and the melodic part. Really kind of learn how to comp, playing with Larry. I mean, other situations too, of course, but playing with organ, there's that sound thing where the electricity of the guitar is like welcomed with the organ. It kind of and there's that beautiful thing. And I was also playing with other organ players at the time. I got to play with Lou Donaldson around that time, and was getting to play with Lonnie Smith, Dr. Lonnie Smith,
Yep.
and Melvin Ryan, people with just very different approaches to the organ. So again, it's not about the instrument; it's about the person
Yeah.
you're
What's
playing with.
going on?
The
Yep.
social experience of like being in this person's musical company. But the thing with Larry and Bill was something we always came back to. We were contemporaries. We were
Right.
friends, and just been able to make records and document our tunes. And really, only in the last 7 or 8 years have we kind of really been touring steadily and doing
Yeah.
that, going to Europe and being able to play some gigs in the States in the last few years, which is kind of a minor miracle to put like two together. Because there's a lot of places you can't really go to play. There's no gigs in Wyoming. Maybe there's a few. I don't mean to disparage Wyoming, but it's like it's not a typical stop on the tour. So traveling around the
Right.
states can be tricky. You got to go a little West Coast and then
Yeah.
come back. It's not like you can traverse the
There's a big
country.
expanse when you leave Chicago. There's a big expanse before you get to
A lot of room in there.
Salt Lake and some places like that that have
Yes,
some.
we ever done the drive across country tour in a van, unlike some groups maybe in previous generations. But
You got
that's
to
what
really like your
that's
buddies if you're going to do that. I'll tell you.
another level. But I mean, it's yeah, we've been just very lucky to put some gigs together and hit some spots and get a little bit of on a very uncommercial kind of way, just be able to like play for people and just being like, I mean, it's nice to know that people appreciate something that's about an ensemble thing. It's about the individuals because Larry's a genius and Bill is, of course, a mad genius, and it's just like, we're just trying to like play like together more than be like, here I am doing my thing. Like as heavy as Bill is and as heavy as Larry is, they make every group they play with sound better, sound like a group. So people will say, what is it? Why do you guys sound like a group? I was like, well, these guys make every group they play with sound like a group. We just happen to have more experience and have, we can play, we're comfortable with each other in a good way that makes us continue to challenge each other. We've heard each other play a lot, and I know they've heard all my licks. So every time we get to play, I'm trying to reach for stuff, and feeling that they are in such strong support that whatever I do, even if I just throw up a bunch of air balls and don't get anywhere near the basket, they'll still sound good. So I have that comfort to try and reach for things, and I think they feel this. They feel the same way with the other guys in the band. So it's just trust and support without getting into like, here's the show again. We're going to do our show. We're really trying to stretch. And even on the tunes we've been playing for 30 years, we're still trying to stretch and find new things.
That is really funny. That phrase, music. I'm going to call that musical air balls. I love that.
I mean, sometimes nothing goes in.
One of the things that I noticed when I was listening to you guys play and watching you play and stuff like that is that, in addition, I mean, I know all you guys can swing because I know you because I know you can because I've seen you do it. But some of the tracks that I saw displayed for the organ trio format displayed an unbelievable amount of sensitivity for each other. and that I've never really seen that before. I mean, I'm watching Bill back there, creating his fills, and you're creating rhythmic fills with the thing, and then Larry's doing a thing that it wasn't your typical organ trio kind of thing. And I'm guessing you've already answered the question. You can only do that if you play together for a long period of time and really kind of create something new. What's fascinating about it is that it's great for the audience to come in and watch you three guys, at your level collaborate, on the spot like that is freaking awesome, to be honest.
Well, it's an ensemble music, really. I mean, you do have the tradition of like soloist with accompanying band or something like that, and
Right,
there's a tradition for that too. But a lot of the small group music and the things that certainly that we love in terms of what we were checking out, uh, Coltrane's band, Miles's bands, it's just like how the personalities came to blended together. Like that's
right.
the whole thing. So uh, I don't know. I mean, I just feel like in terms of the organ trio approach, I don't think those guys, as much as they, love Jimmy Smith records and McDuff records and all the things that people lay down that are the, the whatever those are the books that we read to, but we all definitely have a feeling. I think those guys really more so than me have a feeling of like we don't need to rewrite those books. We're going to go out of our way to write different books and not worry about then that it's not might not be as good as the original book. It's just like we
Sure.
have to try to not if it's a tune that calls for a certain bag and a certain feeling, then
Right,
then we'll go there and do it. But at the same time, we're not consciously trying to recreate something.
right.
Also, we're not. I don't think consciously trying to really bust out of any kind of genre. It's just like
Well,
let's just play. Let's not call so much attention to like we're doing this
right.
and they never did this before.
How do you approach a gig like, say, a Diana Krall gig when you were doing that to the difference between, like, you did the thing with Brad Meldau, you've done so many different things. Is there a change in approach, or is it pretty much the same approach, or
Well, I
how does that feel to you when
I
you,
definitely feel it's the same approach in terms of what instrument I bring to the gig.
hmm
Like what I'm not going to feel like this is this kind of gig, so I got to bring this kind of guitar and I got to
no, yeah,
like so and so, or I got to do this. I'm trying to bring myself to the situation and be respectful, and especially if I'm in all those cases I'm a sideman, so
right,
I'm there to enhance whatever gig they whatever show they want to present, whatever they want
right.
to, and see how I can contribute to it. And I don't know. I've always been fascinated by the idea of a sideman who can play the gig, but also not disappear into the gig. And that's a thing that everybody has to deal with, like what you're sacrificing and what like some gigs are just you're not as free as other gigs.
Right.
So that's just a natural thing. I've been super lucky to have so many different musical experiences that what it's taught me is like you have to learn how to be yourself in the strongest way you can, and you have to learn how to be as appropriate as you can
Right,
because it's really about being a guest at someone's party.
right.
They are the host. They've invited you to their musical party. You're a guest. Be a good guest. Doesn't mean take over. It means contribute to it without having to have the party or the situation be about you. So that's the challenge. And
It is a challenge. When you are a sideman, or let's say a high profile sideman, not just, there is a real thing to that, to have your presence felt and known, and your contribution there and present without taking over. And you do an amazing job with that. And so
well,
I'm giving you kudos. Yay. It's
I
good.
try to. I'm working on it. I feel like over the years, thinking back on many gigs where I kind of failed miserably, both at being a presence and or being doing the right kind of shit for the gig. Like we all learn what's right by doing what's wrong and figuring out like okay, and everything not that whatever's left that's appropriate for the play. You can look at it as kind of it's just how you decide what to like, how you decide what to wear. Not that.
Right.
Well, I
Yeah.
guess that's okay.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. So it's just and it's just choices. It's just making musical choices that you
Yeah.
have to make based on basically your security level as a as a human being, but also as a musician to know appropriately what's there. Like there's certain gigs that I've never done because I just have no, I would have no way to be anything but an observer at a party like that.